This program, Words Like Freedom, will feature Cheryl Boyce-Taylor, author of Mama Phife Represent, and Donika Kelly, author of The Renunciations, June 19th, 2:15 p.m., available for purchase online from the Schomburg shop at schomburgshop.com are today's featured books, Mama Phife Represent and The Renunciations.
Good afternoon. We are halfway through the third annual Schomburg Center Literary Festival, and we're so pleased that you've decided to join us on this Juneteenth. My name is Novella. I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs and Exhibitions at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture at the New York Public Library. Thank you so much to our ASL interpreters and live captioners who have been with us throughout the festival. Captions can be seen on the screen or using the stream text link posted in the chat. This year's literary festival not only honors the talent of some of our greatest contemporary writers, but builds on the foundation created by Cheryl Schomburg, encouraging freedom of thought, the relentless pursuit of Black history, and the engagement of our imagination towards our collective freedom. I am so pleased that we get to hear from poet and teaching artist Cheryl Boyce-Taylor and poet Donika Kelly. Boyce-Taylor, known to some as Mama Phife, mother of beloved original member of A Tribe Called Quest, Phife Dawg, who was born Malik Taylor, joins us with her latest collection, which is a memoir in verse, Mama Phife Represents. She holds us through a mother's path and journey of grief and remembrance. Donika Kelly is the author of The Renunciations and Bestiary, winner of the Cave Canem Poetry Prize, a Hurston Wright Legacy Award, and the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. She's a Cave Canem Graduate Fellow and a founding member of the Collective Poets at the End of the World. I have to say that I am on the board of Cave Canem, and we are celebrating our 25th anniversary. And so it's such a pleasure to be with both of these poets this afternoon. We will hear them both read from their works, and then we will have a discussion, include your questions along the way. If you have them, please use the chat at any time. And just to let you know, the library values your privacy. So we want you to know that even though the video and chat are on the Literary Festival website, they are hosted by YouTube. By participating in the chat, you might share data about yourself, which the library does not control. You can order Mama Phife Represents and The Renunciations online at schomburgshop.com. And if you're on the LitFest website, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and select the book for purchase. The Schomburg shop supports the work of the Schomburg Center. First up, please welcome Cheryl Boyce-Taylor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here to share in this reading with my esteemed colleague. Thank you all for having me. I'm going to start off with a poem called At 19. At 19, his fish body sliced through the warm embroidery of my bloodline. I held my baby, the first one to touch his face. I was never alone. For years, I wore a baby on my hip, held a baby to my lips. I was never alone. That child with a shimmering afro, oh, the secrets birth thighs tell. And damn the lessons hearts yield. I can't hold you now. I am alone, but really not alone. In the quiet of this night, I'm missing you, the way a weight makes one out of breath. Sometimes I feel like the child left. The second poem I'm going to share from the book is When Her Child Dies, number 2. When her child dies, a mother does not know that she will be grateful for anything. She will be grateful that she raised him in church, grateful that he was not killed in the back of a police cruiser, on the BART, the London Underground, New York City subway, grateful he was not killed by knife, gun, machete, rope, tree trunk. When her child dies, she will be grateful he did not end up on life support in hospice care. She does not know that a street would be named for him in his birth town of Queens, that murals will be painted in Paris, Australia, South Africa, Chicago, Trinidad. She will wear his pajamas to bed, cuddle the Minnie Mouse doll he bought at a London airport. And when she finds a gold chain on the sand in South Beach, she will know he left it for her because she loves glitter. She will listen to his music over and over again. She will tremble at his sass. She will know she is lucky to still have his songs. She will gather white candles and sage. She will sprinkle white rum and build him an altar. Her tears will flow into the Nile. She will give him back to Shango, to Oya. She will love herself, Ibeji daughter, Ibeji mother, more than she ever did before. And in closing, I will share a new poem from the newest collection I'm working on called Now. It's called Don't Look Back. You put down the pen, pick up its spine, close the poem over and over again, like you don't trust your first ending. When your child's voice goes missing, find some kind of repetition, some kind of repetition. Find some fresh cut iris to fill that space, or purple or blue pansies. This is often scary. Paint that wish again. Try that poem again. When you reach the heart, leave it there. Let the reader fall off the cliff if they choose. Just don't look back. Don't look back. When did the world stop being mine? There is nothing that we own but our good intention. Morning after morning, I woke up missing my son. Soon I decided not to sit in that clutter, but to wake peaceful, to patch my heart, to sew it back, to fill the jars of my arms with honey, to relearn the use of love, to relearn the use of love. Thank you.
Oh, Cheryl, it's always so good to hear you read.
Thank you, Donika.
I'm gonna, oh, I also wanted to say that I'm so grateful to be reading with Cheryl, with the Schomburg on Juneteenth. I don't know, it feels really good. So I'm gonna read, I think, 4 poems. First one is titled Oracle. The God in my brain is no God, only a homunculus I recognize as myself. The God in my heart, the same. The God of my liver, the same. The God of my guts and thin skin, me. The homunculus guiding my father bears his mustache and heavy-lidded eyes. Was it he who placed the God in me that is me? And what do I mean by God, I wonder? I take my questions to the oracle. Say either, who placed the God in me? Or, what do I mean when I say God? The reply to both being, your father. Stupid oracle, I think. Fathers are for children, and I was never a child, only a smaller image of myself. Donika questions the oracle. Who hid my dad in the mountain, impoverished, where he would remain invisible and rationed, not on milk and honey, but on bologna and saltines until he grew strong enough to kill the father? Which father? Do I mean his daddy, exiled for the rest of his diabetic days to a closet in a house with no power, no water, where my dad, his sisters, and his brothers, caught for a time by the crack rock and the pipe lighting up in the dark, lived? Surely not his daddy, oracle. Surely not. How long was he the youngest? How long was he a child? What God swallowed him whole? The God perhaps who split his mother in two or took his brother with a bullet from another father's gun in the sunlight in the afternoon? Did he really hold his dying brother's hand, oracle, the brother who wanted only an apology on my father's behalf? Who held him when his mother died? Who told him of a heaven where dead mothers and brothers go? Oh, the pigeons. What of the pigeons, oracle? Did he tend them, watch them rise from the roof of the house with no power or water, but a daddy in a closet, his sisters and brothers flaring in the rock light? Did he delight in their return? The pigeons, I mean. Did he ever delight, oracle, in anything a child might? Did he look for his name in the sky? Did he ride a bike made from junk parts in the South Central LA sun, fast as a boy might? Surely he did that, oracle. Surely that. And when he rose like an improbable stone from his father's gut, whichever father I mean here, whichever father makes sense, the siblings, the pigeons, his daddy in exile, his name in the sky, when he rose with a stone of himself in his hand, covered in bile and mucus, free now of someone more powerful than the child he surely once was, did he know the terrible thing he would become? Portrait of my father as a winged boar. And actually, I should just make a little note here. When Perseus cuts off the head of Medusa, from her body or blood springs Pegasus, which I think most people are familiar with. But there's also another, so Pegasus has a sibling, and it's either a winged boar or a golden giant man. And those two things are obviously not the same. But if it's the giant golden giant man, then he is the father, becomes the father of Geryon, who tended the red cattle that Heracles stole as one of his labors. So, portrait of my father as a winged boar. When his mother dies, by metal turned slicing blade, from her blood springs my father, whose name I refuse to say, as he refuses his father, the half-known man who sired him. In the dry LA light, the boy, my father, turns so that he is caught. One way, a winged boar, another, a giant, a gold blade of a man, both high-skulled and thick-maned, a juvenile without a sounder, a boy without a mother. He recognizes himself only in the man, carves himself into golden armor, but the rutting fact of him, the curved tooth, the thick neck and beating wings, trembles beneath his skin. Whatever sheen the California sun burnishes out of his body, whatever good work his thickening hand compels, whatever woman he touches in the afternoon on the roof, he cannot deny his firstborn, his red fledgling, her many heads and hands, what he makes for her, a junk bike she loves, cattle, red in the field, a mirror, a red wreckage of her body. And the last poem I will read is called Sanctuary. The tide pool crumples like a woman into the smallest version of herself, bleeding onto whatever touches her. The ocean, I mean, not a woman, filled with plastic and lace, and closer to the vanishing point, something brown breaks the surface. Human, maybe, a hand or foot or an island of trash. But no, it's just a garden of kelp, a wild life. This is a prayer, like the sea urchin is a prayer, like the sea star is a prayer, like the otter and cucumber, as if I know what prayer means. I call this the difficulty of the non-believer, of waking every morning without a God. How to understand then what deserves rescue and what deserves to suffer? Who? Or should I say, what must be sheltered and what abandoned? Who? I might ask you to imagine a girl no older than 10, but also no younger, on a field trip to a rescue. She is led to the gates that separate the wounded sea lions from their home in the class. How the girl wishes this measure of salvation for herself, to claim her own barking voice, to revel in her own scent and sleek brown body, her fingers woven into the cyclone fence. Thank you.
Thank you both for those beautiful selections. I'm usually someone who's just in the audience and I get to sit with the words for a while and be a fan. And so now I have to turn my attention to, no, you have questions you have to ask for you both. But yes, we get to do this on Juneteenth. And I think often about sort of coming out of enslavement and still remaining tender and loving. And I feel that each of you in your work come to the other side of the grief and the trauma, still tender and loving. And I appreciate both of you for that. One book, the blurb said this was a rescue mission. And the other book, it said, a mother hand gathering the castings. Can you both talk a little bit about what you reclaimed for yourself, if that's the right word, in writing this collection? We'll start with you, Cheryl.
I have definitely reclaimed joy.
Say more about that.
It was very hard. You know, Malik was my center. Phife was my center. And it was very hard to get through it, of course. But finally, my therapist said to me one day, you're not just mourning one person. You're mourning Malik, that's true, but you're also mourning Phife Dog. And I'm telling you, Phife Dog was, was an amazing character in my life. My life with him was fun and travel and meeting all kinds of people. And I didn't see them as two people. But ultimately, I realized how much I missed that life. Just going to meet him in places, that was so exciting for me. And my dear and beautiful son, missing him was something I don't know if I'll ever get over. But anyway, I was afraid that I would dwell in sadness for too long. As my mother, right before she passed away, she begged me not to mourn her death to the point where I never looked back, but to be sad, go through it, and find myself again. And I reclaimed joy, and I know that I have found myself again. It's taken 5 years, but that's okay.
You feel that joy in the book. Like I feel it when I read the book, even like just like there is like tenderness and grief and all of that is like so deep, but there's also this sense of celebration of, I don't know, like the richness of a life. And that really comes through in the book as well. Like it feels like you were writing. I don't know. It felt like you were writing out of that space to me, like just hearing you describe it.
Thank you.
And I think in this book, one of my big questions that I had like outside of the work was who is at the center of my life? And I think I wanted to be closer to the center.
Right.
And so some of the writing was like figuring out like what I wanted to keep from these two formative relationships, and how I was in those relationships, like with my dad and then with my ex-wife. And so I sort of took that as, in some ways, the project when I put the book together of like, okay, how do I get to the center? How can my speaker get to the center of her own life? Like, is that possible? And is it possible to do that tenderly? Not raising, everything behind, like not burning all the bridges, but just like a tender kind of investigation. Felt really important for both me, just like my mental health, but then also thinking about that speaker who I was bringing into these situations, and then thinking about possible readers, so it felt important to be as kind as possible in that sort of excavation and in that inquiry.
And so do you feel like for yourself, you have sort of reclaimed that kindness and centering of yourself in your world?
I think I'm closer. Mm-hmm. I think it's a lot healthier. I think the dynamic that I was working with was one of where I had to put what I needed and wanted. Like that wasn't important. And I ended up being the person choosing to do that, and I'm so glad you brought up therapy, Cheryl. with my very many therapists, I think that's been like a long-term project of like how to be vulnerable and soft and open. And that means sort of bringing more of myself forward and being more present in my own life. And so I think that kind of comes through in the work as well. So I wouldn't say necessarily reclaiming, but maybe just like claiming, or maybe like just putting a hand on.
Right. Okay. The journey towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it. Well, I completely agree with Donika when she says that I can feel the special relationship that you have with Malik. It certainly comes out in lots of different ways. I love his term for you, mama, sister, mom, sis. Clearly you had a playful relationship. I think of poems like Pray. And I also think of the poem, Mama Phife Battle Rap. I can feel the roar of a mama lion, however, reminding us that don't come for her son at all. And so I wonder, one, how do you find the strength to put that on the page? Was that part of your process? And as you do that, because I have a second part to that question, I also want you to read Pray, because I think it just shows the kind of relationship that you all had.
Okay. Yeah, Malik was a very strong little boy, very opinionated. And I know I'm his mother, but he was a star from the beginning. Definitely. I don't know if many people know this, but I had twins when I had him, and his twin brother only lived for 8 hours. So, of course, his dad and I, our focus and our job was to keep him alive. But he was 2 pounds and 15 ounces because he was premature. And he would be kicking his legs and smiling. And he came home. He was in the hospital 3.5 months. And he came home just smiling and happy. We couldn't understand that, how he could come home so cheerful and loving. And the rest of his life, he really was like that. That's not to say we didn't have fights and disagreements, but he had the star quality from the very beginning. So this piece is called Pray. He stood near my bed, one hand jammed in his pocket, his thinking cap on slightly crooked. He surveyed my face. Then the delightful boy of 7 said, "Mommy, do you pray?" "Yes, Malik," I responded. "Mommy," he said more sternly, "what words do you say?" "All the parents come to church except you two. I don't want to go to heaven and my parents are lost. I am almost ready to be baptized, you know. I looked at my little Christian boy and did not have the heart to tell him, we don't go to church on Saturdays, babe. We stay home to watch Soul Train, which he ended up doing later on. So disapproving, but he ended up doing it later on.
And so that's like one of the lessons that you, though, also share is listening to your child, right? So I'm curious about how did you find the strength, right, to allow your child to say, you know, at 16, I'm going to leave high school and I'm going to go on tour.
Yeah, that was very difficult. I really wanted him to go to college. And I had actually gotten a second job, part-time job that I was doing so I could save that money for his college. And when he told me, well, we had a rule in our household, and it was you had to be in school or you had to be working. And so he came to me and he says, Mom, you know, you told me that I have to be in school or I have to be working. And I don't want to be in school right now. He said, I have the rest of my life to get school. I'm going to be working and I'm going on tour with a tribe called Quest. We're headed to Europe. I mean, just like I'm saying it, that's how he was saying it. And I was like, oh, I said, I want you to go to college. I'm working extra to pay for it. You won't have to pay anything. And he said, I don't want to do that. I want my music career. Mm. And I had encouraged him from his birth almost to decide what he wanted, to go after it with hard work and determination. And here he was telling me that's what he was doing. And what do you say after you've encouraged your child to do that? Do you say no? It seems like such a contradiction. So and he had been very unhappy after the divorce, after his dad and I divorced. And so he had so much sadness, but hip hop brought back all this joy to his face and being. And I just wanted him to be happy, no matter how difficult that was. And so, you know, and I knew he was a good young man, very good. He prayed all the time. To the end of his life, he prayed before meals. I didn't care if he was sitting with Queen Elizabeth. He prayed before his meal. He was very spiritual. So I let him go. And I supported him all the way. It was difficult, but I did, you know, when I grew up, my family was, you do as I say. I don't care what you want. And I never wanted to be that type of parent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Donika, I often remark that I receive whole sermons from nature when I run in the park. Mm-hmm. And you use a lot of imagery in your work. I'm curious about your relationship to nature and why this language to convey the ideas that you have in this work. Mm-hmm.
I think the easiest answer, the simplest answer is that the kind of being that we are, humans, in the West, under capitalism, under white supremacy, does not give me what I need to like make sense of what I'm moving through. Mm-hmm. And I have found a way of making sense, perhaps, or looking for different ways of making sense in terms of how to relate to myself and how to relate to other people. Is there a way to do that while striving for a kind of balance and a kind of like, I don't want to romanticize it because I think, you know, the natural world is not an easy place, but it seems to me that plants, animals, other animals have figured out a way to be in balance, and I would like to be in balance, and I would like to get free of some of the stories, like very much like what Cheryl was saying just now. Like my parents weren't exactly do as I say, but they were very much like, put us at the center. We are the most important, you know, and there wasn't a story in my family that could help me make sense of my experiences, that could help me make sense of how I wanted to love, both in terms of romantic relationships and also in terms of friendships. I often talk about my friendships as like tending these little gardens or like tending these spaces because like it takes work, you know, and it's and there are ways that sometimes I have to show up. For example, when like I have other stuff going on, but my friends are like, I need you to show up. And I think, oh, this is a part of the tending. This is a part of being in community. This is a part of it. And I didn't have those models. And I don't always know that we have those models just sort of broadly, like in the sort of in dominant culture for sure. You know, it's like just trying to find balance, and balance is long-term, is longitudinal. It's not just in the moment. And turning to the natural world really helped me, gave me a different scale, I guess, to make sense of how I wanted to try to be.
I think that's a perfect segue. I would love to hear you read Citing Tarot.
Yeah, of course. Ah, tarot. I had someone ask me, they were like, do you believe in tarot? And I was like, it feels like a close reading, like a way of, because it gives you a lens through which to understand something that's happening. And so this poem comes out of just an experience I had with some of my friends down in Texas, who I love very dearly. So, Citing Tarot, Pflugerville, Texas. I learned how to hug here, how to draw a boundary and hold here against the gale force of my mother's late night rage and sob. Learned too what it meant to be chosen, to choose. Brought myself back to the receiving line. My chest cracked into 2 wet pieces after a fall so lonesome I wasn't sure I'd survive, and met the arms practiced in mending. I asked Jenny to read my cards. Sid and Shannon on the couch behind me, Amber and Joe in the kitchen, Nat in from Berkeley, the kids running around, Carlicia, I'm sure, at my right hand. Jenny spread the Celtic cross, gestured as she does, which is to say grandly, at my present, at the problem we all knew, the past, the conscious and unconscious, waited for the cards to name what we could all see. There at the position of hopes and fears, 3 swords and 1 heart. How rude, I thought. Do y'all see this shit? I said aloud to the room gone quiet. A relief not to have to say what I had known in the room where I had learned the kind of love possible between friends, now family, the kindness possible between partners, grateful for the rough blow finally landed and the net to catch me.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. So good to hear. If anybody would ever ask me, I said if I had a lot of money, I would have people read books and poems to me, because there's just something about hearing the poet and the writer read their own work that I just relish. So thank you. And thank you for writing that. It's a beautiful ode to friendship. And I think you're right that there's this way that we don't even center friendships as like the 3rd or 4th kind of relationship that should be important in your life, but certainly ends up being so. And certainly as adults, if you're an unpartnered person, there's lots of ways in which that becomes true. And I feel like, Cheryl, you talk a lot about your friends. I see the Frida Kahlo pillow behind you. Could you talk a little bit about how, your friends were that kind of net for you, and why write about them? Why have them also show up in your work? I think you're on mute.
Well, they're my chosen family for one thing. When I left Trinidad when I was 13 years old and left the bulk of my family behind, my dad, my mom, my brother, everything that I knew was dear. So as I came into young womanhood and older, the people that held me together were the ones that I chose and the ones that chose me. But that's the people that felt like family. In fact, friendship means so much to me. that I will work hard, I will be there, I will be honest and truthful in friendships. And my partner and I, we're this year will be 25 years we've been together. And we've had a lot of things through the time, but the thing that has saved us though, this whole time is our friendship. We developed that first, and that has really saved us as a couple through all of this, the pandemic, all the other things that we go through in our lives, the death of my son. So that means a lot to me. I don't know, there's something so special about my poet friendships. It's like sisters, lovers, literary. I can't really explain it, except that I know that there are two types of friendships for me. The one with the writer, the one with the co-writer, and the ones with my other friends. I guess in a way I can really speak more honestly to the person that I'm writing with. And you know, when after Malik passed, I went down to Anguilla, and I felt like I needed to touch the ocean, touch the land, and talk to Yemaya about bringing my son back. And my friend Jacinia Montilla, she said, "Oh no, you're not going by yourself. We're going to meet you there." And she and her partner came down and met me there. Now that's some kind of love.
Yes, it is.
You can't walk out on that no matter what happens. So, and I have been really lucky to have friendships like that. But you nurture them. They don't just drop into your life, and that's the important thing that one needs to know, that you go the distance for it.
Does that resonate with you, Donika? I know that you're part of a collective, but that relationship that she talked about, her writer friendships and then her personal friendships, another way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are all of these different layers of being held, and they all need tending. You know, some need more intensive tending than other. My beloved and I, we joke about. Well, I joke. She didn't like it at first, but now she's fine with it. But I was like, her friends have known her longer than I've known her. My friends have known me longer than she's known me, right? So there's like just so much history there, and that it's important for us to like take care of those relationships. And the part that she didn't like was, I was like, so like we just met, even though it's been almost 5 years now. But there was just like, it's like all of these people have this history with us, and honoring that history and those relationships, it feels important for the health of our relationship, that we have time with our friends, you know, that's just like ours. And I think like some of my closest friends, all of my closest friends actually are writers, and they don't all write poetry, but there's something about like we can really get into like the making art conversation. And like what we're trying to do and like what our big questions are, in a way that just feels like such a gift, like such a tremendous gift.
Yes.
I know I wouldn't be here without my friends.
Yeah.
Like they've just held me, and I hope I've done the same for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I weigh the times when I was writing alone and not having that one or three friends that I wrote with. And it was a lonely time. Writing is lonely. But to have discussions with friends, we can sit up all night to pick apart a poem. It just feels like family cooking together.
That's right. Yeah.
There's something that you said that I now slipped my mind what I was thinking, but hopefully it'll come back to me because it was a good thread. I'm curious about your relationship to the work that you've done right now. So I remember hearing this artist say, you know, when they're creating the art, that's when they're on the journey. And when it's done, they're done. that's when the audience, suddenly becomes sort of familiar and wants to ask all these questions. But now they've moved on to the next thing. And I've also wondered this about people who write about trauma, who write about grief, who write from these places where you start out possibly in this hurt place, and maybe you've come to the other side. Hopefully you've come to the other side, not where you began. And so I'm curious about your relationship to the work now. Are there questions that are harder to answer when now revisiting this work, because you've kind of done this work in writing it, if that makes any sense. And so, now having to revisit those words and those feelings at that time, do you have a different relationship to it? Or do you sort of wish the book could just exist out there in the world and people find it? If that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Cheryl, do you want to take it first, or?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Right before the book came out, I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody about this book. Like, that was my feeling. I was like, I don't want anybody to talk to me about this book. I like the book. I like the poems a lot. Mm-hmm. I like reading the poems actually, like, quite a bit, because every time I read them, there's something that new that catches my eye, or that sort of clues me into how I was thinking or feeling at the time of writing the poems. And that feels really interesting and exciting. But I felt really anxious. I felt scared leading up to the book coming out. And then it came out and I was like, oh, this is actually okay. Actually, I'm happy to talk about it. But I think it got really big in my mind. And it's actually really pleasing to come to the book, to read the book and talk about the book as a piece of art that I made, and to sort of come into contact with it in a different, like, depending on how I'm feeling, I'm like, oh, this poem. Oh, I didn't know I was thinking, or like just some little nugget will appear. I think, oh, that's really interesting. I might want to just keep track of that feeling or that note or something. So it's pleasing to me. I mean, I like my work a lot, so.
You should. Yes, Donika, we are here for that.
Cheryl, what about you? What's your feeling?
And I will say, to add to that for you, Cheryl, because we talked about Pray and I mentioned Mama Phife battle rap, but when I read Apricot Begonias, I was on the floor in puddles. It was like you scooped me up, and then I was on the floor again, and then you scooped me up. And so, a poem like that, I would love to ask you to read, but at the same time, I'm just like, I don't want to put you in that position, right? So this is sort of where that kind of the question stems from.
Yeah. Well, that was the hardest poem to write. It took me the longest, I'd say maybe about 2 months, that I was going back and forth with this thing and breaking it in different ways. Well, the week before the book came out, I was just crying and crying. I don't know. What I felt was that I had made this baby and I was letting this child go into the world without anybody to protect it. It's like I've written 6 books. I've never experienced that before. And I know why. It was so close to my heart. Like, I had to speak to my son's wife, and I had to speak to his dad about some of the things that I was writing in this book. I think of it as a table book, a quilt, a scrapbook. And it wasn't a linear book that you start at page 1 and go right through to the end. So I felt like people would be confused by it. But I had to write grief the way it came. And I was committed to that. I had to write grief and healing the way it came into my life, and I had to be committed to it. But I was very unsure of the response of others. I think for me and other writers, that's always something that we're a little bit afraid of in putting out a new book. But as I've been reading from this book, and it's been 6 months, I would say it's around 6 months now, Malik is so present in my life. He is present all the time. We have this little trick that we do. I'm not crazy. We have this little thing where his birthday, when I'm thinking about him the hardest, I'll look up and I'll see his birthday on the clock, right? 11:20, I look up and I see it. When my daughter-in-law was here on the, because you do a lot of edits and you work with your line editor. So on the last day, I said to my daughter-in-law, I am not doing any more edits on this book. It's finished, it's done. So I hit send. And when I looked up, the number of messages that was there was 1120. And this keeps happening over and over again. It is like, I said, okay, Malik, thank you. Now I just say, hi, Malik, when I see that, So, and that is really helpful too. Although he was a public person and he shared a lot of things about his illness and different things, I wanted to make sure that I didn't share things that he wouldn't want me to. So that was hard, but then I was writing this book so people could honestly know who Phife Dog was. Malik Taylor, that's the little mischievous Caribbean boy that grew up to fulfill his dreams. And I really wanted his fans to know how he started and who he was. But there were times when I felt I was telling too many things, too many family secrets, and I had to check with my family to say, is this all right? So it was, and then I was in so much mourning too. So it's been a different, but I'm glad I wrote the book. I'm happy with it. I was unsure for a long time.
That's fair.
And this is when I had to be true to my artistic self. Just listen and follow.
And that structure that you describe, like that sort of quilting, it does feel like, it feels like this sort of, I don't know quite how to say this, but there's like this sort of, we're just brought into the feeling, like we're in the feeling, and the feeling is not just low, right? Like, again, like those joys just really come through, and it feels, there's mourning and also celebration, and like the images of like the letters and things like that, just like so sweet. Oh my gosh. Anyway, it's just, it's a beautiful book.
Thank
you.
Like
just the way that it's put together is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So agree. Well, we're gonna close out. We didn't have any audience questions, but I really just enjoyed sitting here and talking to you both. I'm gonna ask you, Donika, to close us out with a love poem. But before we do that, I just wanna let folks know next up at 3:00 is Jennifer Nansabuga Makumbi, who will be discussing her book, A Girl is a Body of Water. I hope that you will tune in, if not on the Nella Larson stage, that you will tune in on the Langston Hughes stage. And just thank you all for being here. I will now turn it over to Donika.
Thank you.
And thank you, Cheryl. Sorry, thank you.
You're welcome.
This was so wonderful. What a wonderful hour.
Yes.
So, love poem. Let us be ocean and coast, a taking into and over one another, shifting sediment, a breaking down of rock, dredge, and deposit. A series of prepositions meaning proximity, although the most of us extends away from one another. Once in winter, I ventured far inland, forgot the crash of gravity pulling you over me and away, forgot there is a place where we meet and retreat, but never let go. Let this be a moment of remembering my love as I stand at the edge of myself, cliff and seagrass, and the screaming gull above, sighting your breath to the horizon. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Novella.
Thank you. I absolutely love the way you use images. And you
Thank
just
you.
pull in the land, and it's so rich. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Get the books. Get the books.
Get these books.
Thank you, Novella.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for sharing
Right. Okay.
Phife Dog with us.
Okay. Thank you.